How's it going, everybody? Well, you've been asking for it, and here it is. We're going to take a look at the history of the world, I guess, by Bill Wirtz. I was actually first introduced to this video a couple of years ago by my eldest, my daughter, who's going to be 16 this year. And then there's actually an app that has all the different sounds and stuff from it that you can hit buttons and get the little like clips from it and stuff. So that's kind of cool. I guess it's a fun thing to do. We're closing down on 10,000 subscribers, and I promised you guys that when we got to 10,000, we'd be doing some giveaways. Those will be coming. So if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications. That'll get us there that much quicker. And if you have suggestions about what you'd like to see me do for giveaways here on the channel that would be historically related somehow, use the comment section below and let me know what those things are. Now, I've made a decision that some of you probably aren't going to like. Since I'm primarily concerned with the history part of things, we're going to kind of pick up the video where history starts. The first 3 or 4 minutes is mostly science. And while I love science, and I think science is fantastic, and it's such an important thing to have, and my son, my 13-year-old son's probably going to go into a science field. For me personally, I'm more concerned with the history part of things. And also, there's so much here. And there's no historian, no matter what people tell you, there's no historian that knows everything about everything. And especially when it comes to Asia, Eastern Asia especially, I don't know nearly as much as a lot of people do. So I'm not going to try and offer feedback on things I don't know well. So I'm going to let some things go and then just pause on some key points and make some observations about some things. And please feel free to throw yours in as well. Use the comment section. Let's have a conversation. But let's go ahead and dive into this.
And now everything's huge, including bugs. Want to see a map of the land? Sure. Oh, fuck. Now everything's dead. Just kidding. Here are the survivors.
Oh yeah, don't forget language on this too.
It's
so
about
yeah,
to become the dinosaurs.
that's a problem for you.
Yeah, it broke apart. Don't worry about it. It does that all the time. Here comes a meteor. And the dinosaurs are gone. It's mammal time. Here come the mammals. Look at those breasts. Now they're gonna dominate the world, and one of them just learned how to grab stuff and walk. No, like walk like that and grab stuff at the same time. And bang rocks together to make pointed rocks. Ouch. And set things on fire. Youch. And make crazy sounds with their voice. Knirsch, which can mean different things. That's a human person.
So let's talk about language for a second, because I've always been really fascinated by the origin of languages. And most people who study languages will tell you there's certain connections to different languages. For example, English is a Germanic language, and so English and German kind of are in the same tree, so to speak. There's kind of a family tree of languages. Primarily for those of us in the West, we speak Indo-European languages, which have kind of their own tree, and that includes things like Persian, I guess Farsi, things like that. So most of Europe, Eastern and Western Europe, parts of the Middle East, and then of course everything in the Americas all primarily come from the Indo-European languages. There are these couple of weirdos, and that's primarily Finnish and Hungarian, who don't come from the tree that everybody else comes from in Europe. So it's kind of strange how that all works, but I encourage you to check that out and kind of look at the Indo-European tree, because you can see where all the different languages kind of formed out of each other.
And now they're everywhere. Almost. Ice Age. What? You can walk over here? Cool. Not anymore. Well,
so this is something we learned about here in America, since this primarily deals with North American history. Talk a lot about the connection between Asia and North America through the Bering Strait, which then disappeared. And they say something like 20 to 25,000 years ago that's when the Native Americans who became the Native Americans eventually came across and settled in North America.
We're stuck here now. Let's review. There's people on the planet, and they're chasing their food. Fuck it, time to plant some grass. Look at this. I control the food now. Now everyone will want to be my friend and live near me. Let's all build houses, except mine is bigger because I own the food. This is great. I wonder if anyone else is doing this. Tired of using rocks for everything? Use metal. It's underground. Better farming was just invented in a sweet dank valley right in between these two rivers.
So, yep, between rivers, Mesopotamia, the Tigris and the Euphrates, kind of the cradle of civilization. I call it the Fertile Crescent sometimes. And yeah, the oldest known civilizations, when you start getting into archaeology, it all kind of came here. This is modern Iraq now. This is where the Babylonians, the Persians, the Medians, the Assyrians, all of these different groups, basically all the parts of the Bible that you read about in the Old Testament take place in this area.
and the animals are helping. Guess what happens next? More food, and more people who came to buy the food. Now you need people to help make the food and keep track of the sales. And now you need houses for people to live in and people to make the houses. And now there's more people and they invent things, which makes things better. And more people come and there's more farming and more people to make more things for more people. And now there's business, money, writing, laws, power.
So it's really cool to see how all of that stuff developed over time, and history develops about the same time. So most of recorded history goes back to that time, that 3,000 to 4,000 BC, or BCE as they call it now. So you see all of these things kind of being developed as time goes along, and it's just really so fascinating. You had Hammurabi's law, his code of laws. You have the Ten Commandments from the Bible. Of course, you have Egypt developing around this time as well, and developing their own laws and and religion starts to form around all these things.
Coming soon to a dank river valley near you. Meanwhile, out in the middle of nowhere.
So, and that's something that goes on well into, at least the 19th century, that everything's built around rivers, obviously for the obvious reasons of water as a source, but then later, into the Middle Ages and beyond, it becomes about commerce. And even here where I live in Northeast Ohio, all of the cities sprung up around rivers: the Mahoning River, the Cuyahoga River, the Ohio River, the Allegheny River. These are all places where you had access to water, which gave you the ability to do industry and to ship things. And so civilization was always going to develop around bodies of water where you could have ports and rivers.
Nowhere, the horse is probably being tamed. Why is all my metal so lame and lumpy? Tired of using lame, sad metal? Introducing bronze, made with special ingredient tin from the far lands of Tinland. I don't know, my dealer won't tell me where he gets it. Also, guess what? Egypt. Meanwhile, out in the middle of nowhere, they figured out how to put wheels on a horse. Now we're getting somewhere. Also, China. And did I mention Indus River Valley civilization?
And again, this is one of those things that, at least here in the West, we don't talk a lot about. We talk a lot about Egypt and the Mesopotamia regions, just because those are the things that eventually develop into Europe, which is what develops into North America. But the Indus River Valley, China, and all the different dynasties and the different kingdoms that existed there, we don't really talk about that much. It's almost like that's a part of history that doesn't matter a whole lot. And I don't know, I'm curious to know, is that true for folks in China, India, those areas? Do they equally not talk that much about what happened in the West?
The Middle East is getting more complicated. Maybe because it's in the middle of the East. Knock knock, or clop clop. It's the people with the horses. And they made an empire. And then everyone else copied their horses. Greeks. Ah, look, it must be the Greeks, or a beta version of the Greeks. Let's check in with the Indus River Valley civilization. They're gone. Guess who's not gone? China. New arrivals in India. Maybe it's those horse people I was talking about, or their cousins or something. And they wrote some hymns and mantras and stuff. You could make a religion out of this. There's the Bronze Age collapse. Now the Phoenicians can get down to business.
And this is where you develop written language. I think the Phoenicians were one of the first to develop an alphabet. You have cuneiform and things like that. So this is where you're starting to get actual recorded history. And it's really cool because all the time, even to this day, they're still finding things, especially right in here. They're finding new things that kind of open our eyes to how things were. Just because we don't know about things doesn't mean that it wasn't written down. It just means maybe we haven't found it yet. And so, 100 years from now, our understanding of this time in history is going to be completely different than it is today.
Also, can we switch to a metal that's a little easier to find? Thanks. Look who came back to Israel. It's the 12 tribes of Israel. And they believe in God.
So, Yahweh, there's no vowels in Hebrew, so it's Yahweh, so to speak. This is eventually what we translate in Latin as Jehovah. But it's the name of God, and it would be Yahweh, I guess, would be the way to say it with vowels. And, as a Christian personally, I believe, in the God Yahweh, but as do Jews and Muslims for that matter. They're all what we call Abrahamic religions, which means they all trace back to the same first 5 books of the Old Testament. But this was also a time when Egypt was flirting with monotheism. You had Akhenaten, who was one of the pharaohs of Egypt, and Aten was the sun god, and he was the one who kind of instituted the idea of a one god religion rather than polytheism, which is what most religions were at this time. And then, of course, most of us think of monotheism. We think of Judaism as being the first one to do that, but the Egyptians had it too.
Just one, though. He's got like a 10-step program. Here's some huge heads. Must be the Olmecs. The Phoenicians make some colonies. The Greeks copy their idea and make some colonies. The Phoenicians made a colony so big it makes colonies. Here comes the...
So this is where you have culture being spread to other areas. And the Greek culture, even after Greece really kind of ceased to be a major power in the Mediterranean, their culture was still prevalent. And one of the ways you spread culture was through colonization and through trade.
The Assyrian Empire. Never mind, it's the Babylonian Median. It's the Persian Empire.
Yeah, so this was like back to back to back, and this is again something that the Bible covers a lot in some of the later books of the Old Testament, where you have the Assyrians and the Persians and the Babylonians, and just kind of one comes right after the other, and then eventually the Persians run into the Greeks, and Alexander the Great kind of conquers all of them, but then that doesn't last.
Wow, that's big. Ah, the Buddha was just enlightened. Who's the Buddha? This guy who sat under a tree for so long that he figured out how to ignore the fact that we're all dying. You can make a religion out of this. Oops, China just broke, but while it was breaking, Confucius was figuring out how to have good morals. Ah, the Greeks just had the idea of thinking about stuff. And right over here, Alexander just had the idea of conquering the entire Persian Empire.
So Alexander's the son of Philip of Macedon, I believe. So he was Macedonian. Remember, Greece was not just a country. It wasn't just Greece. You had the Spartans and the Athenians and the Macedonians and all of these different people groups who had kind of all shared a similar culture, but were still independent kingdoms and even warred with each other at times.
It's a great idea. He was great. And now he's dead. Hopefully the rest of the gang will be able to share the empire evenly between them.
Nope. Alexander the Great dies in his early 30s, and this often happened with really, really big empires like Alexander the Great, even down to people like Charlemagne, and Genghis Khan's another example. As soon as the next generation comes along, they can't hold it together. It was really built around one person and his conquests. So Alexander the Great was just one of many who conquered a lot of territory, but it never lasted until the Romans came along.
Knock, knock, it's Chandragupta. He says, get the hell out of here. Will you get the hell out of here if I give you 500 elephants? Okay, thanks, bye. Time to conquer all of India, or most of India. But what about this part? That's the Tamil Kings. No one conquers the Tamil Kings.
So the Tamil Kings, it's like a triumvirate. It's like these three kings who kind of ruled together but also fought with each other at times and didn't get along. Think of like the triumvirates in Rome, where you had three guys who shared power, but they rarely shared power for very long. That's kind of what was happening here.
Who are the Tamil Kings? Merchants, probably. And they've got spices. Who would like to buy the spices? Me, said the Arabians, swiftly buying it and selling it to the rest of the world. Hey, China put itself back together again, with good morals as their main philosophy. Actually, they have three main philosophies. Out here, the horse nomads run wild and free, and they would like to ransack your city. Let's check the Greekification levels of the Greekified kingdoms. Greekification overload. Bye, said the Parthians. Bye, said the Jews. Hi, said the Parthians, taking over the entire place. Hey, said the Romans.
So obviously the Romans start out mainly just in the Italian peninsula there, and then they spread through time, and it was Julius Caesar who conquers most of Gaul, which would today be France. But it wasn't just kind of a thing where all of a sudden, boom, there's the Roman Empire. It took them many, many generations to conquer all of this territory, and just as many generations to lose it all again.
The entire Mediterranean for breakfast. Thanks for invading our homeland, said the Jews, who were starting to get tired of people invading their homeland. Hi, everything's great, said some guy who seems to be getting very popular and is then arrested and killed for being too popular, which only makes him more popular. You can make a religion out of this. Want silk? Now you can buy it from China. They just made a brand new road to the world.
And again, this is, trade is what drives the spread of culture and these connections. In this case, it's the Silk Road. Everything's about trade. Everything's about acquiring things. And this is when you start to really see the world connecting to each other.
Are you can get their own water. Sick, new trade routes, said India, accidentally spreading their religion to the entire southeast. That's a good place for an epic trading kingdom. There goes Buddhism traveling up the Silk Road. I wonder if it'll reach China before it collapses again. Remember the Persian Empire? Yep, said the Persians, making a new one. Axum is getting so powerful they would like to build a long stick. Has anyone populated Madagascar yet? Let's do it together. China's home again.
There you go. And you know, when people talk about, you know, the great devastating wars in human history, we think of World War II, World War I, but you know, if you look at some of the wars, especially the civil wars that happened in China over the last 2,000 years, by far some of the bloodiest conflicts in human history happened because you have so many people there. And yet, at least here in the West, so few people know about that.
Still can't cross the Sahara Desert? Try camels. Hell yeah, now we got business, said the Ghana Empire, selling lots of gold and slaves. Hi, I live in the Roman Empire, and I was wondering, is loving Jesus legal yet?
Nope.
No. Actually, okay, sure, said Constantine, moving the capital way over here to be close.
So Constantine becomes a Christian. I don't know how sincere it was or if it was more for kind of political purposes. He wins a battle and sees a vision of a cross in the sky or something like that during the battle and attributes it to the God of the Christians, and so becomes a Christian himself. And you see that a lot in some of the areas where Christianity spreads, like in Britain, in Germany, in Gaul, France, things like that. A lot of these rulers became Christians out of political expediency rather than necessarily kind of a really heartfelt conversion to a religion. So Christianity and politics are completely intertwined for most of Christian history, for a good 1,1600 years at least, even up to the last couple of hundred years.
Closer to his main rival. Don't worry about Rome, it won't fall. It's the golden age of India. There's the Gupta Empire, not Chandragupta, just Gupta. First name Chandra, the first. Guess who's in Rome? Barbarians. What's a barbarian? Non-Romans, said the Romans, being invaded by non-Romans. R.I.P. Roman Empire.
So yeah, barbarians gives the idea that these were completely uncivilized people, and they weren't. You know, the Huns, the Visigoths, the Goths. You know, you had people even back to Julius Caesar's time where he fought people like Vercingetorix. And these were civilized people who were educated and who had culture and technology. They're just called barbarians because they weren't Romans. They were outside the Roman Empire. And so we have this idea of them that I don't think is real accurate.
Actually, just half of it. The other half is just fine. But it's not in Rome anymore, so let's give it a new name. The Mayans have figured out the stars. Oh, and here's a huge city. Population, everyone. The Gok Turks have taken over the entire Eurasian steppe. Great job, Gok Turks. How's India? Broken. How's China? Back together.
For now.
How's those trading kingdoms? Bigger and there's more of them. Korea has 3 kingdoms. Japan has a kingdom. It's the Sunrise Kingdom. Deep in the Arabian desert, on the top of a mountain, the real God is
Islam.
in Muhammad's ear. So he goes down to the cube where everyone worships gods, and he tells them their gods are all fake. And everyone got so mad at him that he had to leave town and go to a different town. You can make a religion out of this, and maybe conquer the world as well. The Roman Empire is long.
And you know, that happened really fast. I mean, within a generation or two after Muhammad, they had conquered large parts of what even today we consider to be Islamic centered nations. But again, almost immediately you have a split. You have the split to Sunni and Shia Muslim. And I don't know a lot about that, and I don't want to offend anybody by getting it wrong, but I'm pretty sure that happened fairly quickly. And it had to do with a debate over who they felt should be the next head of Islam, so to speak.
Gone, but somehow the Pope is still the Pope. Plus there's new kingdoms all over Europe. I wonder if there's room for Moors. Here's all the wisdom.
So the Moors, you know, most of Spain for a large part of the Middle Ages is Muslim, and it's the Moors. And you actually, if you can trace your ancestry back to Spanish royalty, there's a good chance you descend from Muhammad and people of prominence in Islam.
It's the Baghdad House of Wisdom, just in time for the Islamic Golden Age. Let's bring stuff to the coast and sell it and become the Swahili on the Swahili coast, said the Swahili on the Swahili coast. Remember this tiny space you have to go through to get from here to there? Someone owns that now. Want to get enlightened in the middle of nowhere? The Franks have the biggest kingdom in Europe, and the Pope is so proud that he invites the king over for Christmas. Surprise, you're the new Roman emperor, said the Pope, pretending to still be part of the Roman Empire.
So, yeah, this was really, the Pope's not even part of the Eastern Roman Empire, and the Western Roman Empire is gone by this point. The Holy Roman Empire is basically, at least at this time, around 1000 AD or so, when Charlemagne takes over. Charlemagne just is Latin for Charles the Great. That's all it means. Was basically East Francia and West Francia. East Francia is basically Germany. West Francia is France. And this was kind of all what became the Holy Roman Empire.
Then the Franks broke their kingdom into what will later...
Yeah, and this was, again, after Charlemagne. Immediately things get broken up between his children. One of his children became king of Italy. One becomes West Francia. One's East Francia.
It'll be called France and not France. The Northerners, or just Norse if you don't have much time, are exploring. They go north, from the north to the northern north, and they find some land, 2 types of land, and they name them accordingly. They also invade some other places and get called many names, such as Vikings. There's the Rus, the Kievan Rus. Are they Vikings? I don't think so, said the Kievan Rus. Okay, fair enough. The Pope is ready to make some more emperors of the Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire. It's actually Germany, but don't worry about it. New kingdoms.
Christianize all the kingdoms.
Which brand would you like? Mine's better. Mine's better. Mine's better. Time.
Yeah, so now you have Greek Orthodox, you have Catholic, and then eventually from the Catholics you're going to have a bunch more things that happen. Time to conquer England.
To conquer England, said William. It's a bird, it's a plane. It's the Seljuk Turks, said the Byzantine Empire, who's getting so small it almost doesn't exist anymore. We need help. They need help, so they call the Pope. Hey, Pope, can you help us get rid of the Seljuks? Maybe take back the Holy Land on the way? Come on, I know you want to take back the Holy Land. Yes, I do actually want to do that. Let's do a crusade. Crusade! They did many crusades, some of which almost didn't fail, but at least
the Crusades actually... Again, not so much about religion. I mean, to some folks it was, but it was an opportunity for land. It was an opportunity for adventure. It was an opportunity to gain favor with the Pope, who had a lot of authority at this time. There were a lot of reasons why people went to the Crusades that had nothing at all to do with Christianity.
Italians got some sweet trade deals. Goodbye, Mayans. Hello, Toltecs. Goodbye, Toltecs. Hello, Mississippi. Look at those mounds. There's the Pueblo. I always wondered how to build a town in a cliff. Guess who's here? Come here. Where? Here. And Pagan is there. Vietnam unconquered itself. Korea just became itself. And Japan is so addicted to art that the military might have to take over the government. China just invented bombs and typing. And the Mongols just invaded most of the universe. Nice go.
And again, big empire that doesn't last because it gets split up afterwards. And gunpowder, it starts in the east, it makes its way west, eventually becomes a huge deal in the west.
Oh, and Genghis, I bet that will last a long time. Some of the Islamic Turks were unaffected by the Mongol invasions because they were busy invading India. Is it Tonga time? I think it's Tonga time. I just found out where the Swahili gets all their gold. Look at this Chad. Means lake. There's an empire there, right in the middle of Africa. The king of Mali is so rich he's going on tour to let everyone know. Wow, that guy's rich, everyone said. The Christians are doing a great job reconquering Iberia, which will soon be called Spain and not Spain. Please remain Christian.
And Spain is a relatively modern country. It was Aragon, Castile. It was, if you grew up learning about Ferdinand and Isabella, who were the ones who sponsored Christopher Columbus to explore going west, Ferdinand and Isabella were the ones who actually united Aragon and Castile into one nation that became Spain, and it was their descendants then that became the kings and queens of Spain.
Christian. We will check in later to see if you're still Christian when you least expect. Whoops, half of Europe just...
No one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
China's back, yeah.
Oh, so he really kind of glossed over the Black Death there, but the Black Death, the plague, kills somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of Europe's population. It came from the east aboard one of those trading vessels came on fleas that were on rats, and because of that trade with the east, it brought the plague over. It probably came in, I think, in Italy first and then spread from there. And I'm most familiar with how it affected England. Edward III was the king during the worst of the plague, and he was a great king, but the country was just devastated by that, and it took hundreds of years for England to recover from the effects of the plague. Just think about what happened. You think it's bad right now with how everything's shut down. Imagine 1/3 to 1/2 of all the farmers, of all the tradesmen, of all the shepherds, of all of the legal people just gone. Imagine what that does to your economy. Imagine how things just stop functioning effectively. You can think about how that would be if it just 1/3 of our people today disappeared. So it was devastating, and it set the economy back hundreds of years.
Hey, come here. Time to share. New kingdoms here and there. Oh, look who controls all the islands. It's the Mahajapit, Majapahit, Mapajahit, Mahapajit, Mapajahit, Majapahit.
There you go.
Oh, Italy's really rich. Time for them to care a lot about art and the ancient classics. It's kind of like a rebirth.
Renaissance.
Here's a printer. Let's make books. So you think you can conquer the Byzantine Empire? Yep, said the Ottoman Turks. Nice job, Ottoman Turks. Oops, you missed a spot. Don't forget to ban Europe from the Indian spice trade. What? That's bullshit, said Portugal, spiceless.
Well, I guess we'll have to find another way to India.
See, so again, trade drives exploration, and that's what drove finding that alternate route to India. That's what drove Christopher Columbus west, trying to find a route to the Indies. Same exact thing.
Wait, said Christopher Columbus, probably smoking crack. If the world is round, let's go this way to India. No, don't worry, we already got this, said Portugal. So Chris goes...
And don't let people tell you that Christopher Columbus is the guy who like discovered that the world was round. We had known the world was round for a long time before Christopher Columbus came along. It wasn't like the majority of educated people in the world thought the world was flat. We had known this all the way back to the Greeks, that the world was round. It was pretty easy to figure that out.
Goes to Spain. Hey, Spain, want to hire me to find India by going around back of the world? No, please, no, please, no, please. Okay. So he sails into the ocean and discovers more ocean, and then discovers the Indies and Japan. Let's draw a line to decide who gets which half of the world. The Aztec and Inca empires are up.
So the line of demarcation was drawn by the Pope to determine who would get what. And basically Brazil was the only thing that was on that side of the line, which is why Brazil speaks Portuguese to this day, because that was the side that Portugal got.
Great start. I wonder if they know that Europe just discovered their continent. The Habsburgs are marrying into so many royal families they might have to start marrying each other. Move over, Lithuania. Here comes Moscow. Ivan wants to make Russia great again. Move over, Timurid. Maybe go invade India or something. Persia just made Persia Persian again. Let's make it the other kind of Islam. The one where we thought the first guy should have been the other guy.
That's what I was talking about earlier.
Sin? Now you can buy your way out of hell. That's bullshit. This whole thing is bullshit. That's a scam. Fuck the church. Here's 95 Reasons Why, said Martin Luther in his new book.
So Martin Luther does his 95 Theses and may not have actually nailed it to the wall the way everybody says, but it could have happened that way. He nails it to the door of the church in Wittenberg and just immediately blows up. And this was a time where to do something like that could cost you your life. And Martin Luther very easily could have been burned at the stake for this. And the Pope tried to go after him. But this was a time when there was a lot of power among the German princes. And he got, I think it was Frederick, to back him, and that gave him political protection, which he desperately needed. But of course, eventually this breaks into a war, I think the 30 Years' War, and then you have wars breaking out between Protestants and Christians all over Western Europe.
Which might have accidentally started the Protestant Reformation. You know what would be magnificent, said Suleiman wearing an onion hat? What if the Ottoman Empire was really big, which it is now? What if Russia was big, said Ivan, trying not to be terrible.
And Ivan the Terrible, who is, I think, Ivan the Fourth, becomes the first Tsar of Russia.
Portugal had a dream that they controlled the entire Indian Ocean, including the spice trade. And then that dream was real. And Spain realized that this is not India, but they pillaged it anyway. Damn, said England and France. We gotta start pillaging some stuff. Then the Dutch revolt and all the hipsters moved to Amsterdam. Damn, said Amsterdam. We gotta start pillaging some stuff. Question 1, can you get to India through North America? No, but at least there's beaver. Question 2, steal the spice trade. That's not a question, but the Dutch did it anyway. Guess where all the sugar's made? In Brazil. Stolen. In the Caribbean. And it's so goddamn profitable, you might forget to not do slavery. The next thing on Russia's...
So they have, slavery, sub-Saharan Africa, south of the Sahara. There's a lot of slavery already happening in Africa. And then Europe gets in on it and starts acquiring slaves from the slavers in Africa and bringing them to the New World. And, they talk about there was a triangle of trade where you're trading rum and slaves and sugar and all this stuff. And pretty much anybody who lived in the Caribbean at that time that was involved with sugar plantations was involved with slavery somehow.
To-do list is to get bigger. Britain and France are having a friendly discussion about who should control the entire world. More specifically, Ohio. Then it escalates into
more specifically, Ohio. And you know who started this war? Yeah, it was George Washington. He kind of ticked off the French and kind of inadvertently started what could be argued was the First World War, the 7 Years' War. And in North America, we call it the French and Indian War because it was England and their allies, Indian allies, versus France and most of the Indians.
Russia a chance to show Austria who's boss. But what about Britain and France? Did they figure out who's boss? Yes, they did. It's Britain. Guess who's broke? Also Britain. So they start taxing the hell out of America. Fuck you, says America, declaring their independence and fighting for it. And France helps them win. Now France is broke. And Britain will have to send their prisoners to a different continent. Wait, if France is broke, why do the king and queen still wear such fancy dresses? Let's overthrow the palace and cut all their heads off, said Robespierre, cutting everybody's head off until someone eventually got mad and cut his head off. You could make a religion. No, don't. Hades.
Actually, they did try to make a religion out of it. They had what was called, I forget what it was called, but eventually they became temples of reason, is what they called it. So they kind of initially had like kind of a deism, kind of a very non-specific religion, and then from there they went to an atheistic culture in France, and then of course Napoleon comes out of the aftermath of all of that. But yeah, it was interesting that you have Louis XVI basically helping America win her independence from England, and then turning right around and having the same thing happen, but much bloodier to them.
Starting to like the idea of a revolution, especially the slaves, who free themselves by killing their masters. Why didn't we think of this before? Wait, who's in charge of France now? Said Napoleon, trying to take over Europe. Luckily, they banished him to an island.
But he came back.
Luckily, they banished him to another island.
Further away.
Latin America becoming independent in the Latin.
Yeah, so but in the early part of the 1800s, you start having all of this independence movement happening in Latin America, Mexico. All the South American colonies eventually become independent. And then James Monroe comes along as president of the United States and institutes the Monroe Doctrine, which basically tells Europe, stay out of the Western Hemisphere, stay out of the Americas.
In American Wars of Independence, Britain just figured out how to turn steam into power, so now they can make
Many different types of machines.
So James Watt is the guy who kind of really pioneers this, and the very first steam engine he built was actually in Tipton, England, which is where my family's from. That's the only reason I know that, to pump water out of a coal mine in Tipton.
Factories with machines in them so they can make a lot of products real fast.
Then they invent some trains and conquer India and maybe put some trains there. Hey, China, said Britain, buy stuff from us. Nah, dude, we already got everything, says China. So Britain tried to get them addicted to opium, which worked, actually. But then China made it illegal and dumped it all into the sea. So Britain threw a hissy fit and made them open up 5 cities and give them an
You notice Britain has a problem with people throwing things into the sea.
island. Britain and Russia are playing a game where they try to stop each other from conquering Afghanistan. Also, the
Sultan of Oman lives in Zanzibar now.
That's just where he lives. India just had a revolution, and they would like to govern themselves now. Nope, said Britain, governing them even harder than before.
Technology is about to go crazy.
So the first transatlantic cable was actually laid, I think, in the 1860s during the American Civil War, or even a few years before, but it kind of corroded real quickly and didn't work, but then they did another one that did. It's hard to believe, but even before things like the telephone were invented, we had a transatlantic cable going to where they could send messages. And think about that. Going from where it used to take months to cross the ocean to then when steam power comes along, it only takes a matter of a couple of weeks to cross the ocean. And now you can get messages across in a matter of hours with this transatlantic cable. So it's incredible technology that's starting to boom at this time.
The United States finally figured out whether slavery is good or bad. It's bad, they decided. And then they continued manifesting their destiny, which is to kill the rest of the natives and take their land and maybe kick out the...
So manifest destiny was this idea that goes all the way back to the colonial times, that eventually America was meant to control everything from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean, and it drove policy. It affected policy over slavery because new territories were added and there were fights over whether or not they would have slaves. It affected the fact that we went to war with Mexico over Texas so we could gather what was most of the Southwest. Really, most of the 19th century American policy was around this idea of manifest destiny.
The Mexicans too? I know, let's rape Africa, said Europe, scrambling to see who could rape it the fastest.
Yeah, if you look at the map of Africa, it very quickly, Belgium and Germany and France and Italy and the United Kingdom, they're all gobbling up Africa. It's kind of the new spot for colonization since they can't do it in the West anymore.
Britain and France are still hungry. The United States ran out of destiny to manifest, so they're looking for more.
Hawaii, Cuba.
Wait, Spain controls Cuba. Well, blame something on them and go to war. What should we blame on Spain? Let's blame the Maine on Spain. So they blame the Maine on Spain.
So yeah, the USS Maine was not blown up by the Spanish. It was probably an internal explosion that caused the Maine, but it was just like many other times in history, it was an excuse to blame something on somebody so you could go to war. The Germans did it in 1939 to blame Poland so they could go to war with them. It happened with the Maine. It happened in Vietnam. So yeah, we fight. We take the Philippines. We had taken Hawaii in 1890s as well.
Now we're in business. To celebrate, they kick Panama out of Panama and make a canal, connecting the two oceans. Britain just found oil in the Middle East. It makes cars go. China is so tired of being bossed around that they delete their old government and make a new, stronger government, which is accidentally weaker and controlled by a guy from the previous government. Europe hasn't had a war since the last war, so they start World War I. Look at those guns. It's going to be a great war. So great we won't need a second one. After it's over, they blame Germany. Russia.
Yeah. So World War I was kind of, we often talk about, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand started the war. World War I was kind of inevitable. I know it sounds weird to say that, but this was a time of kind of an arms race. People were building up their armies and their navies as quickly as they could. There was, ever since Germany had been united as one empire and kind of became the most powerful nation in Western Europe, there was this inevitability that war was going to happen because there was this constant fight over the balance of power. So if it hadn't been the assassination in 1914, it would have been something else.
Russia went on strike and the workers overthrew the government. Now everyone's paycheck is the same.
Communism in the Soviet Union.
The Arabs revolt and Britain helps. Now the Ottoman Empire is gone, so we can give the
Jewish people a place to live.
So the Ottoman Empire had been declining for centuries, and by the early 1900s, it was well on its way out. And World War I just kind of became the excuse to eliminate it as a de facto empire, but it had really been just progressively worse in terms of the people that led it. They had lost some wars in the Balkans against some much smaller nations, and it was on its way out.
Hopefully the Arabs won't mind. Let's cut the cake, said Sykes and Picot, carving up the remains of the not-so-Ottoman anymore empire.
Except Turkey, Turkey makes a brand new Turkey.
And then the Saudis conquer Arabia. It just seemed like the right thing to do. Hello? Yes, it's the 1920s calling. Let's get in the car and drive to a party and listen to jazz on the radio and go to the movies. The economy's great and it'll probably be great forever. Just kidding. Germany's back featuring Hitler, the angry mustache model, and he's mad at the Jews for existing. Japan is finally conquering the East, and they're so excited they raped Nanking way too hard. They should probably just deny it. Hitler's out of control, so the international community tackles him and tries to explain why killing all the Jews is a bad idea, but he kills himself before they could explain it to him.
That's World War II.
Yeah, and a lot of things came out of World War I and World War II. Obviously, World War II happened because of the aftermath of World War I, with the Treaty of Versailles, which was a disaster in the making, and just set Germany up for World War II to happen. And then the aftermath of World War II, we have the United Nations. We put all kinds of things in place. But the aftermath of World War II then leads to the next several generations of warfare with the Cold War, because of the Soviet Union kind of having influence over Eastern Europe and the Western powers having Western Europe. And then they start fighting proxy wars in places like Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan.
Bonus round, Pacific Showdown. United States versus Japan. Fight.
Extinction Ball.
Let's unite all the nations and have some
World peace.
Seems legit. Hi, I'm Gandhi, and if Britain doesn't get the hell out of India, I'm going to starve myself in public. Wow, that worked. Bonus, now there's Pakistan. Actually, two Pakistans. One of them could be Bangladesh later. The Jews and the Arabs finally figured out which one of them should live in the Holy Land. Me, they both said at the same time. Let's divide up the land so everyone's happy.
Sight, they both get
No one's happy.
Look out, China. There's a new China.
And immediately, the day that Israel declares its independence as a nation, there's a war. And they get invaded by the surrounding Arab powers. And they win. And, people forget that even happened because it was kind of over so quickly. And then there was another war a few years later. But that's been fought over for millennia. It's not something new just to the last couple of generations.
In China. What's on the menu? Communism. No thanks, said the other China, escaping to an island. I wonder which one is the real China. There's the Korean War, Korea versus Korea. Nobody wins, then it's on pause forever. Let's meet the sponsors. Oh, it's the two global superpowers. They're having a friendly debate over which economic system is good and which one is an evil virus of Satan. And they both have atom bombs. Fight! Wait, no, that would be the end of the world. Let's just keep it cool and spy on each other instead.
So yeah, there's mutually assured destruction is kind of the doctrine at this time. It's the idea that we're both building up these massive stockpiles of nuclear weapons that could destroy the whole world. But if either one of us fires any of them, the other side's going to do the same thing and nobody's going to win. But we came really, really close a couple of times, especially in the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. I don't think any of us realized just how close we came to World War III and nuclear war during that time.
And make sure we have enough atom bombs. I'll race you to space. Now let's make some more countries fight themselves. Europe is tired of pillaging other continents, and the continents they were pillaging are tired of being pillaged. So here's a new map with new countries. Now you can't tell who they're being pillaged by. The United States finally decided whether racism is good or bad. They decided it's bad, and the world agrees. South Africa might need another minute to think about it. Let's check the world population. Whoa. Okay. Technology's better too, that might keep happening. The Soviet Union decides to relax a little and accidentally falls apart. Europe makes a union, so now they can all use the same money, except Britain because they don't feel like it. Let's check the mail. Surprise, it's on the computer. Whoops, someone just attacked America. I bet they'll remember that. Phone call. Surprise, it's in your pocket. Want to learn everything? Surprise, it's on the computer. Now your phone's a computer, which is in your pocket. Whoops, the economy just crashed. Don't worry, the big banks won't fail because they're not supposed to. Surprise, flying robots. With bombs. Want to print a brain? Some people have no friends. Some people have no food. The globe is warming.
And the ocean is full of plastic.
Let's save the planet, said everybody, not knowing how. Let's invent a thing inventor, said the thing inventor after being invented by a thing inventor. That's pretty cool. By the way, where the hell are we?
So I didn't really go over much of the recent history there because you guys know that stuff. We've lived through it. So there's a lot of other things I could have said. And, you know, like I said, I just kind of glossed over some stuff in favor of just kind of selecting what I wanted to talk about. But I would love to hear your thoughts about all of that, everything we just talked about. There's so much there. Use the comment section below. Please hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you again soon with another video. Thanks for watching.